Okay, here we are for my next little bit of my introduction to doing retro games using Unity 3D. And I'm looking right now at OpenSCAD, which has been my favorite tool lately for making graphics. I've been just whipping together things that are sort of have a mechanical look to them because it is a CAD software. They're a little bit lo-fi, and in doing so, you end up with some stuff that I think reflects a bit of a retro kind of aesthetic without having to necessarily get into pixel graphics. I'd like things to be a little more high fidelity for the tablet that I'm working on, but I'd also like to use pixelated elements where it's interesting. Uh, and I'm having a lot of fun with this kind of 2D, 3D thing where you make the 3D models and then project them orthographically so you can rotate them and get some interesting things, but you still have that flatness and that controlled element where things are lined up just the way you want. So I've been using OpenSCAD for most of that, and then Blender has been my tool of choice for doing further cleanup and refinement and getting the textures put on things. Uh, I used Open, which one? Oh, Google SketchUp actually to make this model of the Defender ship or the familiar. Uh, I don't know what the name of it is. The Super Eagle, the Rescuer, and then colored it in very similarly to the original aesthetic. And I brought this now over uh, by exporting it in FBX. You get exactly what you want, the texture, the alignment, and everything, and scaling once you scale it the way you want. And then you just bring it over into Unity, and uh, and there's your models. You can see here they are. Uh, some of my models for the game are right in here. You have here's our pod, and here's a settler lying down. Here's a swarmer, which is there's a lander. There's a drone and a saucer, and the terrain is divided in two pieces. Although I can't show you very close up, but you can see it obviously in the game close up. Uh, and so it's very easy workflow, just messing around that way. Being on the very simple level, if I was doing much more complex modeling, I'd have to learn a lot more Blender, which I'd love to do. But right now, I just know the basics, and I know enough to do this sort of stuff. So I'm having a lot of fun with that, and I'll use it to do more interesting things as I learn. Uh, so by using a 3D model, it gave me some flexibility. Again, you could reuse a lot of these assets once you built them, and use them close up and rotate them and do all kinds of cool things. And I'm looking forward to exploring that more. So here we have my scene, and I'll just give you an overview of the scene that I've built. And you can see that the basic game is built in all one scene, one big level, and I have some persistent objects, and I could break it up into more levels and have it load, say, the landscape and have a different landscape in a different level and have different enemies and stuff. But for now, I just built it all in one so that I could say have everything in there, which as a fairly small scale game for the classic game element that I'm building so far, uh, you have only a certain small number of models, which you can see here in my window, and then you just have more and more instances of them, and Unity 3D can handle that all day long. Hundreds and hundreds of them. It does it just great. So let me give you a little view of how I built the scene, and before I do, I'll just give a run of the game and show you what happens when the game runs, and the scene side by side with the game, if I can do that. Okay, so here we have the game running, and I'll just shrink it down, and here's our scene. And you can see as the game runs, and we'll just in the attract mode, the camera is panning along with the ship, which is invisible, and the camera preview, which you can see here, is panning along with it. And if we back up as the ship reaches a certain point, I could hurry it, but I'll just let it go. The ship will reach a certain point, and the landscape in the backside will move ahead of the ship, so that by the time we get there, everything will be, there we go, just where we need it to be. And so that trick is surprisingly easy, and I'll demonstrate that and give some code examples of that at a point in the future. But yeah, and from the player point of view, all you see is just continuous movement. By the time you ran out of space or the math became unwieldy inside of Unity, you would basically have played for days. So it works well for a small contained game like this, and I always reset it back to 0 anyway when you start. So you're basically, you'll never run out of space in this game. Okay, so just checking the time. I have about 5 minutes to explain some of the layout, and I'll just go over the basic layout of the game as you've just seen. So here, of course, I have, let's just run it, and I'll do a pause and show it as it's running instead of when it's not. Okay, so cool. So here we have, inside the game, you'll see I've got goth, that's the main game, which manages everything, and other things call into it when they want to do global stuff. I might do more messaging stuff and pass things around that way so that things can just respond. You know, everything can be like, oh, I'm listening for that, I'll do it. But for now, I've done basically mostly callbacks, and in a game like this, most things can chain one after the other. As soon as the game over screen is done, it comes back to the front screen, so forth. So the game over can decide when to say, go back to the front screen, since that's the only place it ever goes. So, but if you have something where you need to be more flexible, you can think of other ways of doing that. Anyway, to get into more detail about the layout, here's the camera, and there's a camera for the main display that displays that stands away from the mountains and shows everything from the side. And it sometimes zooms in and out as you're playing, and so there's also a separate camera for the back which just shows the mountains and stuff. You can see if I turn that on and off, the star field disappears. Some of the explosions still remain, other effects still remain. Let's just unpause it so you can see there we go. Okay, so that camera just shows like the star field and stuff. There's also an attract camera which shows things in front, like these little dudes. There's a radar camera at the top which shows at a smaller scale, which shows things, and only their icons. And actually each enemy on the screen has an icon associated with it, including your ship, a little ship icon. It's just a sphere, a white sphere, and those are shown inside the radar. And so that's how I built each of these things. Wherever it goes, the sphere goes. And so there's the radar camera, again, very simple, just another camera. Tell it where to display on the screen, in this case 0.3 to 0.9 at 0.3 and 0.91, and it's wide 0.4 or 0.09 height. You know, that gives you that radar. So, I don't know, it's just really easy to make a radar that corresponds to your game in Unity. It's unbelievably easy and fun. So then there's some audio player sources attached to the camera. There's some stars that are there, and then that's pretty much it. Oh, there's also a big cube that is used to blow things up when you want to turn on your smart bomb. It just occupies the visible area, and anything that touches it dies. Very simple way to do a smart bomb. The player ship has its mesh. It has an icon with it. Again, all the enemies are here as prefabs. I'll get more into the details of this at a later time, and you can see again the scene has the world divided into two halves, and those are in the scene, and I'll get more into how those work in the next segment when I go into scripting. So anyway, that's the basics of it. Little marquees that overlay the screen for when we need them, and the Woogly plugin for the web build. So anyway, I'll get more into all of that at a later time. I think I'm about out of time now, so we'll just cut it here.